All right, thanks everybody for joining us for our May 19th regular City Council meeting for the City of Courtenay. I'm just going to start by acknowledging that we are meeting on land of the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And we do have changes to our regular council meeting due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And during the COVID-19 emergency, the City of Courtenay, with the authority under Ministerial Order number M083, Local Government Meetings and Bylaw Procedures, COVID-19, has implemented changes to its open council meetings. In the interest of public health and safety, public in-person attendance at council meetings will be prohibited until further notice. Council meetings will be presided by the mayor or acting mayor with electronic participation by council and staff. Meetings are available for viewing via live web streaming or video recording on the City of Courtenay website, and will start at 1 p.m. during this period. And with that, we can start with the adoption of minutes.
Adoption. Seconded.
Excellent. Councillor Frisch, Councillor Hillian, are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Seeing none, Councillor Cole Hamilton, did you have a question or comment?
No, I was just unmuting for the next item. Okay,
fair enough. Seeing no questions or comments, I will assume that this is unanimous in receipt. Next, we have Development Services update to sidewalk patio guidelines.
I think we want to do introduction of late items.
Oh, fair enough. Yes, introduction of late items.
If I may.
Yep.
So I'd like to move introduction of the late item that the recommended resolution regarding the structural change to liquor license application Ace Brewing Company Limited at 150 Mansfield Drive be added to the May 19th, 2020 council agenda under section 8.00 resolutions of council.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to turn this over to Matt Fitzgerald, who can summarize the report and take any questions from council.
Now, right now, I think we're just putting it on the agenda, and then we'll get to it at 8.3. Am I following correctly?
Sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
No, I totally forgot, and I just said about 2 minutes ago I might forget. So I think Mayor, it's all good. Yep.
I just wanted to actually thank staff for actually being so flexible and bringing this up a week early. I know that Ace Brewing appreciates us considering it, so thank you.
Absolutely. All right. And I'll just poll council. So we'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well, so that's unanimous, and that will be added to the agenda for 8.3. Thanks for doing that. And then moving right into staff reports and presentations, the update to sidewalk patio guidelines.
Move receipt of the update to the sidewalk patio guidelines.
Second.
So all right, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Allen.
Thanks. This feels like deja vu all over again. So I'd like to turn it over to Matt Fitzgerald to speak to this report on the sidewalk patio guidelines, and then to take any questions from council.
Thank you through the CA to the Mayor and Council. So in response to physical distancing requirements, we have updated the sidewalk patio guidelines to allow for a third type of patio. In this case, would be located within on-street parking stalls. Other changes to the guidelines are that we're going to allow translucent plastic shields to be installed on top of patio fencing. And the overall intent of these guidelines is to allow for enough space so that restaurants can maintain enough seats to make them viable. So with that, I'll take any questions that council might have on the report. Thanks.
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments? Again, just want to thank staff for bringing this forward and helping us get our ducks in a row so that we can support our local businesses, especially the restaurants right now. And having said that, we do have some more questions. Councillor McCullum.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you to staff for bringing this forward. It's great to see us being responsive to community need. And this is definitely something that local restaurants are going to need from the city, looking at ways to provide some better options for spaced out seating. I just had one question and about the use of 3 parking spaces versus 2. Is it 3 parking spaces regardless of the width of the storefront, or do they have to already be the equivalent of 3 spaces wide in order to be able to take up that much parking?
So if I might just jump in, I think because it seems to be easier, I'll just let staff answer the questions without me needing to interject. I think that's a better process all around here.
Okay, thanks for the question through CAO to Mayor and Council. So should the business not be 3 stalls wide, then they have the ability to expand to be up to 3 stalls wide, assuming that they have support of the neighboring businesses or property owners. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. So do they have to get a letter of support in advance of the application, or is it something where as long as there's been no opposition, we can provide the 3 parking stalls?
Yeah, so in the event that the patio goes beyond the width of the business, then they would need a letter of support from the neighboring property owner or business.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to just say thank you to staff for responding as quickly and as innovatively as they did. I know that about a week or so ago, my neighbor who owns Nikkei Ramenya was looking to design a slightly different patio in order to maximize outdoor square footage in this time of social distancing. And I'm just so pleased that the planning department was able to respond as quickly and as completely as they have. I think these new guidelines are going to be of great benefit to restaurants in the community, and particularly to that one restaurant who was trying to start that trend of different patio designs. So just hugely appreciated. So thank you.
Excellent. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll certainly support this initiative. I just want to clarify, the staff report makes reference to the one business making the request. Has there been any engagement with the Downtown Business Association in relation to this change in the regulations?
Through the CEO, Mayor and Council, no, we didn't engage the association in the preparation of this report.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear all your words, Matthew.
Yeah, we didn't engage the association in the preparation of this report, but I believe, or I know the Downtown Business Association was involved in the initial drafting of the guidelines and provided input at that point.
Yeah, fair enough. I just know that sometimes they're concerned about people's ability to park downtown, but maybe other councillors who are particularly Councillor Cole Hamilton, who's in touch with the downtown business, would be able to gauge that this would be more widely supported. Thanks.
All right, and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I had a similar question for Councillor Cole Hamilton, if he had heard anything from the BIA. I know when this was brought forward in 2015 that it was actually initiated by Downtown Business and had great support from the DCBIA at that time. I also note that it's been excellent for business and for community building in the downtown. So really excited that staff have brought this forward and been so open-minded and come up with some innovative ways to make this program better. And so I'm happy to support it. I do have I have the question for Councillor Cole Hamilton, as well as one for staff in that when downtown opens up, and that might have been today, I wonder if there's any contemplation of making more space for people to walk as well. I know that when it gets busy downtown, which in our hope is often, that it's actually difficult just to walk down the street when you don't have to stay 2 meters apart. So has there been any contemplation about dealing with that issue?
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Actually, we haven't really contemplated it at all yet. There's a lot of moving pieces out there. And actually, this is day one of the beginning of the second phase, which you'll hear more about in discussion on that briefing note that's on later in the agenda. So there's a number of moving pieces here. And that's something we'll have to put our mind to. I don't know if Trevor has any comments at this stage of the game, but certainly can turn it over to him. I see Ian Buck has his hand up as well, so maybe there's some comments related to that question.
Yeah, and I don't expect you to have it solved. I was just bringing up the topic.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yeah.
I would just add that, yeah, it's certainly something that we've contemplated and talked a little bit about. Now that we have all the information from the ministry and WorkSafe BC, it's something that we can explore further. And if there's something specific that council would like to ask us to work with the DCBIA with, or a possible closure of a certain scope, then that's something that we would look forward to.
Excellent. And I know that there is a survey that's happening right now, and Will probably wants, or Councillor Cole Hamilton may want to speak to that. I know Ian Buck is also ready to talk. So Ian, did you want to add something from staff perspective?
Yeah, thanks very much. I just wanted to go back to the consultation with the DCBIA and clarify that because the impact is essentially the same with the patio being on the parking stalls versus the sidewalk bumping out around the parking stalls, we didn't feel that was necessary. But one thing long-term we do want to pay attention to, if we get a lot of uptake of patios or these bump out sidewalks, is what that impact is on parking, and then possibly develop some policy and guidelines around that.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the specific patio redesign, I'm trying to recall if it came up during the discussion last Wednesday with the BIA. I know that I've had Catherine, the executive director of the BIA, came to me with the idea of the parklets, which is coming up in a resolution later, and that's essentially taking still more parking spots and converting them into public spaces. So there does seem to be interest in the BIA to making different use of some of the space downtown given social distancing. So in terms of street closures, I know the BIA, that's something they're thinking about, and I was told by Catherine that they were putting out a survey to members to see what opinions exist out there among BIA members, and I believe they've also been talking to community groups like the Cycling Coalition just to sort of build support for that. But that's something which they're actively exploring, so I imagine we'll hear more about that and hopefully be able to assist in whatever way we can when it comes to fruition. So I think there's a lot of interest in trying to use the space downtown differently to afford the space everyone needs for social distancing.
Yeah, and I think even from years ago, there was the Commons idea in front of the art gallery between 6th Street and the alleyway. So yeah, so I think there's certainly lots of discussions going on. So Councillor Morin.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to bring up, well, first of all, I'm happy to see this kind of effort going forward to help out the businesses downtown, and just wanted to note that in the order that I believe started today from Dr. Henry, she does recognize that although restaurants and bars, pubs, etc., are allowed to open, that many won't be able to because the order is quite restrictive, and there's only allowance for 50% of capacity, and I believe that also applies to outdoors. So, you know, just to recognize that businesses are still going to be taking a huge hit, and again, some may not even be able to operate under this restriction. So just to keep that in mind as we go forward and hopefully develop some more ideas for support for our local business. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much. And I think that is it for questions and comments. It was moved for receipt, I believe, by Councillor Theos. So I'll just poll council if they're in favor. Councillor Cole-Hamilton?
In favor.
Councillor Frisch?
In favor, and this is on receipt.
Just on receipt, yeah. Ms. Richta, you can confirm, but I'm pretty sure that's what I heard Councillor Theos say. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Hillian?
In favor.
Councillor McCullum?
In favor.
Councillor Morin?
In favor.
Councillor Theos?
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And does somebody want to make a motion?
I can make the motion. That based on today's staff report, update to the sidewalk patio guidelines, council endorses changes to the sidewalk patio design guidelines and authorize the Director of Development Services to approve permits.
I'll second that.
All right, thanks very much for seconding that. We just had a fulsome discussion, so unless somebody has anything that they'd like to add, I'll poll council again, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch?
In favor.
Councillor Hillian?
In favor.
Councillor McCullum?
In favor.
Councillor Morin?
In favor.
Councillor Frisch? Or sorry, Theos.
I'm in favor. Thanks.
All right, and myself as well. All right, you think I got a list here, I'd be able to follow it a little better. So, all right, so that's unanimous. So thanks everybody for that. And then we have the amendments to the fees and charges bylaw.
I can move the recommendations. I'll move that based on today's staff report, amendments to fees and charges bylaw 1673 and municipal ticket information bylaw 2435, council approve option 1 and proceed to first, second, third readings and final adoption of City of Courtenay fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3007-2020 and the municipal ticket information amendment bylaw 3006-2020.
All right, thanks very much. And I'm not sure if ever, oh, thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Just when you're talking, Councillor McCullum, for me, it just seems to fade in and out a little bit. So, and I see some other nodding heads, so maybe you might just have to speak a little bit more louder, but I think it was good enough. It wasn't skipping, it was just got quiet, that's all. All right, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For this report, I'll turn it over to Ian Buck. Again, he can summarize the report and take questions from council.
Thank you through the CEO to Mayor and Council. Very quick report. It's really an administrative update to these bylaws on April 6th of this year. As you'll recall, the new building bylaw was updated in order to ensure consistency between that bylaw and the fees and charges bylaw and our municipal ticketing bylaw. We require to do these updates. Happy to take any questions.
All right, are there any questions? I don't see any hands up at this moment in time. Thanks for bringing these forward. I know there's lots of stuff that you guys are keeping busy on and making sure that there's that congruency between different legislation. So thanks for that. And with that, I will poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch?
In favor.
Councillor Hillian?
In favor.
Councillor McCullum?
In favor.
Councillor Morin?
In favor.
Councillor Theos?
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well, so that passes unanimously. All right, next on the agenda, 5.1, correspondence from the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association.
I'll move receipt.
Second.
Excellent, thanks very much. Did staff want to speak to this, or do any councillors want to speak to it? Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Having worked in the food service industry for the majority of my adulthood, this is a very concerning time. Certainly, as even in the last issue that was brought in front of us, a couple of the councillors mentioned that. But the food service industry, just to be really quick, because I know we're tight on time, generally runs on if the restaurants and food service and pubs are successful, they're running about a 5% profit margin, and with the fact that tourism with hotels and all the support businesses that are supporting tourism, majority are closed. this is going to be extremely trying times because realistically, I cannot see how a profit can be made at this point. So there are going to be significant challenges, and as we are very well aware, we're going to have to find some way to step up to the plate to make these businesses survive.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Hillian?
Thank you, Mayor. It certainly is a devastating information about the state of our restaurant and related industries and their very survival. But I wanted to note that on page 3 of the letter, there is a request for support, and there are 6 items noted. I believe the action that staff have taken today and the action council's taken with bringing back the Ace Patio issue is certainly in line with this request from the Restaurant Association. But I'm just wondering if staff have any comments on the 6 items where our support is requested in terms of feasibility.
Yeah, I mean, I can turn this over to Ian Buck to start with, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks very much again through CEO to Mayor and Council. So staff have reviewed this. We've been in touch with the town of Comox as well. They have a report that's coming forward, I believe, this week to their council that will address some of these. We anticipate in either the next council meeting as, again, a very late item, or the June 1st meeting having something ready. In particular related to, in addition to the patios we've approved today, but on private space. So using on private land, sidewalks or landscape areas in order to add outdoor seating is something we'll bring forward amendments to. We really want to work as best as we can in line with the town of Comox. And I think we're in a good space to do that. So I believe looking at these, it's really all the items except number 5, which is a provincial matter that we'll be able to address. But yeah, look forward to that, either late item on the next meeting and another sort of scramble for us, or June 1st.
Thanks very much.
All right. And I don't see any further hands up right now. But yeah, just a big thanks to staff again for expediting these things and making sure we're doing whatever possible. And again, I think it just makes sense if we're in line with the other municipalities so that there's a consistent message straight across the Comox Valley. So that's great. I'll go through polling council for their vote on this, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And thanks very much for bringing this forward and letting us, for the Restaurant Association for bringing their comments forward. And I want to thank the BIA and the Chamber that have also been talking to us to make sure their concerns, if there's something that the city can do, that we're doing our best to support them. Next, we have a briefing note for the BC Restart Plan near-term impacts on the city.
I'll move receipt.
I'll second that.
Excellent. And I'll pass it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is basically just a heads up for council. You're getting this information not that long after staff have received it. I was in on a teleconference with the Deputy Minister of MAH, Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs and Housing, on Friday, and I allude to it in the report. But basically, what we're looking at is the day 1, as I mentioned previously, of phase 2 of the BC Restart Plan. So it started today. It's intended to go over the next few weeks, and then into phase 3, and then phase 4 is essentially, goes from there. And in fact, draw your attention to the attached presentation that was provided. It was one of the 3 documents that I received, that the CAOs received before the teleconference with the DM. So there's lots of really good information here. It puts into context where we've come from, what's next, and essentially the balancing between suppressing the transmission rate, but also averting any serious impacts to the health system if that rate goes up too much, balanced against the obviously the pent-up need to get the economy going, get people back doing activities and things that help them from both a mental health and physical health standpoint. Essentially, we're looking at moving back to what's 60% of normal. Of course, 50% of normal if you're talking about restaurant situations and conditions. Again, we're looking at 3 key areas to reduce transmission, core guidelines for personal care, self-care, managing social interactions. I won't go through them all, but that whole process of transitioning to the new normal is something that has been worked on over the last few weeks by the province, and is now getting rolled out to local governments and obviously through sector organizations to help with safe operating plans for both the public sector and the private sector. Again, if you look at page, I guess 7, that would be page 38 of the agenda. It shows the phased approach to the transitionary period. And again, if you look at really what the focus is of the phase 2 transition, it's they refer to them as enhanced protocols. Essentially, they're the restoration of health services, opening up the retail sector. The ones that apply to local governments fall primarily in the area of museums, art galleries, libraries, obviously office-based work sites like City Hall and other public office space, recreation and sports, parks, beaches, and outdoor spaces. Childcare would be another one. Again, when you're looking at local government, you're talking about sort of the core local government businesses, the lines of business. The core ones we'll spend some additional time discussing because those are going to be crucial. We're going to need those safe operating plans, and we'll need to meet all the criteria that are coming down through health orders from the province, from the minister or the provincial, well, I guess it's Bonnie Henry essentially, but through the public health officers and the compliance officers. And then, of course, we'll be looking at the risk. And those are the things that need to be factored in. We have to look at a combination of contact intensity and numbers of contacts. Again, that's laid out, I think, fairly well from a high level in the attached presentation. I don't want to spend too much time on all the detail, but I think the key thing, if we go back to the actual report, is we're still in two provincial states of emergency, one from the medical health officer and the other through Minister Farnworth. And so those two give us the direction to proceed. But because we're also in those states of provincial emergency, one of the things that we'll have to focus on is sort of a combination of things. The two things: mandatory enhanced protocols, how to move forward, develop operational protocols aligned with public health and safety guidelines. WorkSafe BC, of course, will play a critical role in and has been assigned the responsibility to ensure that those requirements are met. They won't be necessarily doing a full review of each sector sort of guidelines or safety plans, but they will be there as a resource. And I think it's also important to point out that when we look at being in a provincial state of emergency, it's important that we understand what the BSERM or BSEM's hierarchy is, and that's why we've included it on the second page of this briefing note. And there's 8 levels or lists of hierarchy, starting with the number 1, safety and health of all responders. Our staff are responders. And so it's really important that as we transition into the new normal, as we open up our services, that we can do it in a way that ensures the health and safety, both physical and mental health. Stress is a big player here. So we want to make sure we do it right. And so I want to make sure that council understands that that's something that we'll be focused on as we move forward. I think I'll leave it at that and take questions from council.
All right, that has generated some questions, starting with Councillor McCullum.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, David Allen. I just had a question about how we've been handling providing public washrooms during this time of closure. And we're now day 1 of phase 2, and this plan provides for most public spaces to be reopened. And I know the cost of security on those washrooms has been fairly significant, and I'm wondering what the plan is going forward, whether or not we can stop providing the security, whether we want to continue to provide more bathroom cleaning like we've been doing, or what the plan is there, because I don't remember exactly what the numbers were the last time you provided them, but it seems to me that it's a pretty substantial expense right now.
Yeah, very good point, because you know, this is part of the transition, right? So I'll turn it over to Trevor Kushner, who can summarize where we're at so far to date with those matters.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, and something that we're going to be discussing at senior staff meeting actually tomorrow, now that we've got the phase 2 directions from the province. One of the things that we're going to discuss is opening up the Lewis Park washrooms, and Mr. Snyder, feel free to jump in after I'm finished, with enhanced protocols and cleaning protocols and things like that. I will say that the uptake on the washrooms has stayed fairly steady. It is significant in my view, so they're working well. And I will say, and Jennifer, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't heard yet on our application for funding yet from the EOC if those security measures are refundable.
Sorry, just to follow up too, like given what we are paying for security measures, I mean, the idea is basically for prevention of vandalism, because there's been so few eyes in public spaces over this time. Would you say that what we're currently spending, assuming that we're not getting reimbursed, is more or less than what the risk is around vandalism to those 2 sets of washrooms?
I would answer that by saying I think we can draw back on the security and spend less and just monitor it. We know that it is generally vandalism and or just occupancy. So what happens is sometimes people go into those washrooms, they lock the door from inside, and then they're in there for hours and hours and hours. So Mr. Snyder, feel free to elaborate, but I think as we move forward, and if we do not get funding from the province on this, then we pull back on the security and then just monitor.
I'll just add one thing to that. The Lewis Park washrooms, outdoor washrooms, are the next one in line to open. That supports park use, the river users, as well as the courts. And we do see substantial vandalism at it and Sims on a typical summer. And so we would be bracing for probably a little more aggressive vandalism in the absence of security. Our other washrooms like Standard Park or Martin Park, even Anderton Park, the Fit Park, they have washrooms, but they're usually only open when there's booked events at those sites. And so those ones would stay status quo at this point.
How about Puntledge Park? Is there a plan to open those washrooms?
Yeah, it would normally be open mid-May. And so that's another one that we can review with staff.
Great, thanks.
All right, and Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to staff for the report. I appreciate that we'll be getting more detail later on what's involved in opening up City Hall and the particular challenges with having staff return to a more open functioning status. I did want to acknowledge just how much and I think many residents of the city have appreciated our parks during this time. It's been quite wonderful to have those available, and I do have a question from my frequent walks in Puntledge Park, where the playground, as with other playgrounds in the city, has actually been taped. And over the past week to 10 days, that tape has regularly been getting torn down by someone and then put up again by city staff. I know a number of citizens have been reporting it regularly. But I'm just wondering what the status of our playgrounds is right now, whether we are required to keep them closed, whether there's a provincial order in relation to that, or if it's basically up to us.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Dave Snyder.
Thanks to the CAO. Yeah, the playgrounds are, there isn't a provincial order right now saying that they need to be closed. It is up to each municipality to make that choice. We did a risk analysis among the parks folks through the valley and made a decision that playgrounds would sit in a later stage of that risk analysis. We are meeting this Thursday to review that again and to see if we're getting closer to opening those. And we're also coordinating that call with the school district as well. As they have kids going back to school, they need to make a decision of whether their playgrounds are open, and secondary to that, whether they're open after hours. And so the opening of their playgrounds will have an impact on the opening of ours. And so we're trying to coordinate that as well. Probably be more information next week.
Thanks. And if I could just follow up and ask Mr. Schneider if that meeting on Thursday will also be addressing issues like sports and games, for example, the volleyball courts at Standard Park, and the ability of people to play group sports in our parks and fields. Yeah, through the CEO, the challenge with volleyball is a contact, not contact like traditional sense of contact sports, but it is a close contact activity. And we are discouraging the sports, organized sport that requires close contact. Volleyball is a difficult sport to play where you keep 6-foot distances. So we would anticipate that one to stay closed. It would be similar to organized soccer or football or basketball. We're using basketball as an example. We're encouraging people to shoot hoops, but not necessarily organized play, so that you can keep distance. So similarly for volleyball, if people wanted to hit a ball back and forth and keep distance, they are sharing the ball, which is the concern. So we would encourage those people to be from the same household if they're going to do that, but not encouraging any organized play. Each of our courts now have standards of play posted on them for the ones that are open, and those identify the kind of the rules of game. Thanks very much.
And Dave, just to follow up, Mr. Snyder, with the province opening some of its day sort of campgrounds last week, they've also said they're keeping their playgrounds closed. So is there communication with the province on that?
I don't think we have a provincial rep in our call on Thursday, so that would be a good contact for us to make along the way.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor Morin.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just on the note of playgrounds, I know it's a tough one because we can't. It's difficult to control kids to stay that distance apart, but I also wonder if you know, with really good signage and reminders about you know, the guidelines, if that might be something to consider in the nearer future, just because provincially there wasn't an order to close playgrounds, and I mean, we do know a lot more now than we did a couple months ago in terms of transmission. Of course, you know, in the beginning, many of us were concerned about, you know, little petri dishes of children at the playgrounds, but since then we've learned that children actually have quite low transmission rates and other things. And I know our health said that there's a lower risk with children with this virus. So anyway, I'm just hopeful that we can turn a bit of responsibility over to the public in terms of, you know, we've been managing these guidelines for a while. It's been pretty successful, I think, on the island, and hopefully we can start to open up some of these spaces, because I know the little treasures are going a bit stir crazy from personal experience in my own house. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much. I don't see any further questions or comments at this point, so we can pull council for right now. So I'll start with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor?
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
All right, and I'm in favor as well, so that's unanimous. Thanks again for getting us some of the information on sort of the options and implications on opening. So next we have resolution of council from, or actually reports, updates from council. Councillor Hillian, you had a comment you wanted to give, I believe.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Council will recall that a couple of weeks ago, we passed a resolution mandating that we work with the Coalition to End Homelessness to make a proposal to the provincial government for temporary housing and supports to people who were unhoused during this difficult time. And we did follow up. The mayor and Mr. Allen and myself met with leadership from the Coalition to End Homelessness, and they were particularly interested initially in whether or not we could provide a public building and do something similar to what has been done in the city of Victoria with the use of the arena down there for temporary housing. When we met with them, it turned out that on their further reflection, it was their feeling that given the time of year, the warming climate, and some other factors, that it was unlikely that if we did provide such a facility, that very many people would take advantage of it. The reasons for this primarily were that between BC Housing and the ministry that provides income assistance, a number of people who are precariously housed have been placed in local motels and with the increased income assistance during this time. And the coalition's view was that the people who remain in campsites are not inclined to move into an indoor facility. And in fact, there are shelter beds in the local shelter that are available right now. It's not being used to capacity. And as a result, it was determined that the coalition could in fact provide us with information and the basis of a letter that we could send to the government advocating for support to the people who are precariously housed, essentially to enhance the support services that are available. For example, it was noted that there are many vulnerable people who are currently being housed in motels, but without support services, and there are some challenges that are created around that. So that was a week ago, Monday, and or Tuesday rather, and we haven't received the follow-up information from the coalition. I do note that there's a report in the news that the city of Campbell River is moving to provide what has been referred to as a managed campsite. They have a somewhat different situation up there in that they had an 80-person apartment that burned down, and they have a situation whereby they've been able to work with BC Housing to actually fund a managed campsite. That's not a request that's specifically come to us, but if the coalition in the wake of that news came forward, then I suppose we would need to look at what those possibilities are. It seems quite a unique departure that BC Housing has agreed to fund that in Campbell River, because they've been unwilling to do that in the past. Anyway, that's basically the update from the council resolution that we passed that I wanted to provide you with today. Thanks.
All right, thanks for the update. And we have a couple other hands. Councillor Frisch, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor. I did have a chat with Tom Armstrong from the Cooperative Housing Federation of BC about 10 days ago, and he was expecting some news from the government, which I'm sure he received, and so we'll be touching base this week about transitioning back into the work that he was hoping to do with us on that. So I'll get back to you when I know more in a week or two.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. Councillor Morin.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just actually had a question for Councillor Hillian about his report, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually had forwarded that article about the Campbell River situation, and while I agree they've had a specific circumstance with the displacement of folks, we do have several encampments here that infringe on, the Couscous property, etc. That's creating some difficulties. So I guess I'm wondering, Councillor Hillian, if there has been some discussion locally about pushing that a little bit in terms of a managed campsite. And then in addition to that, in terms of supports for the existing encampments, if there's been discussion about providing more supports to actually go into those encampments and connect with people. I know that when I was on the caravan, we did visit. Of course, it was only a couple times a week. And the folks really appreciated that. But I think it would be helpful to have more connections for those folks who are not necessarily, hanging out downtown or accessing services in other ways. So I just wondered if there were discussion on those couple items.
Well, that's actually been an ongoing discussion for a number of years. At this point, we do understand that the Ministry of Substance Use and Mental Health does have outreach teams that go to these areas along with the caravan. The other agencies through the coalition they're funding to cover what I would consider a really substantive program of outreach is not really there. And that's in fact what we talked about with the coalition, that we could bring back to council, that our resolution would in fact cover advocating to the province for additional support services to provide agencies such as the Transition Society and others the resources to actually do this work. So yes, that's certainly an ongoing discussion, and we are awaiting the report from the Coalition to End Homelessness that we could develop a letter from to advocate for additional funding from the province.
Thank you. Because it makes me think of people that are cooking and fires and all of that, and if they had a proper place to do that, that was safe, that would really help. Thanks.
Excellent. And I'll just give a quick update. I mean, I think, we've been keeping in touch with the BIA, Chamber of Commerce, in fact, had meetings with both of them last week, and also keeping in regular contact with our MLA or MP. And then, I think a lot of the regular meetings that we're having every week have sort of slowed down to every 2 weeks. So whether that be with our medical health officer, the province, et cetera, we're still having the meetings just a little bit slower than we were before. So, but again, if I think one of the things that I'm hearing over and over again, especially with things that fall within the jurisdiction of the province, the federal government, is any ideas, if we get them, to make sure we get them passed on so that we can make sure that people are being looked after as much as they can. Again, it's sort of affecting everybody in different ways. So All right, with that, we do have a resolution of council, and I will pass it over to Councillor Paul Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And this really happy about this resolution. It's just an example of the really close cooperation between the city and the business community right now. On Wednesday evening, Mayor Wells, CAO Allen, Gord Johns, and Ronna Ray Leonard all came together in a meeting I set up to meet with the BIA executive and talk through some of the challenges of COVID. And the next morning, Catherine, the director of the ED of the BIA, came up with the idea of parklets and wrote to Mr. Allen, Mayor Wells, and I about that. And Mr. Allen, within about an hour, let her know that that's something they've been considering. And within an hour of that or so, a resolution was put together, which is, of course, on today's agenda. And I think between this, the rapid patio guideline redesign and the resolution we have coming up regarding Ace Brewing, I think it's an example of how the city's really stepping up and moving quickly and very nimbly to respond to the needs of downtown. So on to the resolution. Whereas revitalizing our downtown is a strategic priority of the city of Courtenay, and whereas social distancing now requires more space to be available for patrons of downtown businesses and other members of the public, therefore be it resolved that staff provide a report to council regarding options and implications of a parklet program for downtown Courtenay. And parklets, simply put, are turning parking spaces into small park areas, giving customers and other people downtown more space for social distancing, and given the lack of park space downtown, creating a sense of place and yet another reason to come back downtown and spend some time. So I'm really happy to see this move forward, and I appreciate the support of staff in getting this together so quickly. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Frisch, for seconding. And Councillor Theos, you had a question or comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Will Hamilton, for the update. It's interesting. A few years ago, I brought up some of my travels to Europe and how I had noticed that there was businesses coming out to the streets, whether it was retail or restaurants or any kind of businesses that were there, souvenir stores. And the reception to that, without the vehicles to be there to create the hazards, was tremendous. And at that time, I think I brought it up a couple of years in a row, but it seems to me now that that could be the direction that is going to be very appealing, at least maybe for weekends or whatever the case may be when it falls out, but to try it and see how it flows out from there. But also, I think music and entertainment, making it more like market days downtown on a regular basis, again, with the physical distancing taken into account, I believe that that entertainment aspect will also be critical to seeing vibrancy and success.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, some of the thoughts that kind of came out last Wednesday was things as bold as closing Fifth Street on a regular basis and things like that. So very much in line with what you're saying, Councillor Theos. So, and right now there is a survey that is going through the BIA. So hopefully from that, there'll be some feedback from them on sort of where they see the greatest opportunities right now, which I think is great for us to be keeping our minds focused on that. Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Cole Hamilton and staff for bringing forward this motion. I think it's an excellent idea. I've certainly seen them in other cities. I've taken pictures of the ones along Fort Street in Victoria because they integrate so nicely with their separated bike lane infrastructure, and they're very well used and are part of the city's public space. I have a question about just what we're intending, or if we've even gotten that far in this process, as to whether or not this is another way for businesses to kind of take over some of our parking space to offer somewhere for customers to sit and hang out like we've seen in Comox, or if we're envisioning it being more of a publicly managed and owned parklet within the city. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mr. Allen.
Yeah, I think we've certainly discussed various, we're at early days in terms of reviewing the options and the implications. This is just the first step, but we have had some sidebar conversations. In fact, I think one of our directors, Kyle Shaw, actually sent me off a copy of a 76-page, if I recall, series of guidelines for downtown Vancouver, if I recall correctly. Anyway, there's lots of really good information about the types of programs that are out there. Nanaimo's had a program in place for a while. I personally don't know, I have a lot of detail about it, but I'm confident that we'll be able to explore all the various options and approaches to delivering that kind of a program.
Great. Yeah, it's exciting. Look forward to seeing it.
All right, and Mr. Kushner, did you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor McCollum, it's a great question because it requires the clarification of the distinction between a road closure and the parklets. If it's just the parklets, of course, Public Works will have a role to play in determining how that looks, but we won't actually be a part of that closure. If it's a road closure, you'll recall that we do the traffic control and road closures for the Downtown Business Association now, so we would play a bigger role in that.
Excellent. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks everyone involved in bringing this forward. I think there's a lot of good opportunities here. I know in other places like Vancouver, for instance, a lot of businesses will actually pay for the parklet. Considering the situation right now, this could be a subsidized program for for a short period of time, a year or 2 years or whatever it takes, and then roll it into more of a private program. So I look forward to seeing the report. And I do like the idea of opening this up as well for businesses to use it as retail space if they're interested, because I think that could really help them out as well.
Mr. Allen.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, obviously the report will flesh this out to a much greater degree, but it stands to reason that if you're 50%, you're allowed to do only up to 50% of what your capacity normally would be, providing additional space to allow for that distancing and give these businesses that are under a lot of pressure an opportunity to expand and to build their business back up, does infer that we would look at maybe some of these ideas, opening up or closing down sections of streets and, but trying it on a pilot basis to see what works and what needs to be adjusted if council wants to move forward in that direction.
Excellent. I don't see any further hands. Again, thanks very much, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, for bringing this forward. And I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
I'm in favor, strangely enough.
Councillor Frisch.
You can guess. Thanks.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor?
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
Supportive.
And I'm in favor as well, so we'll call that unanimous. Thanks everybody for making that happen. Excellent. Moving right along, we do have an in-camera.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that notice is hereby given that a special in-camera meeting closed to the public will be held May 19th, 2020 at the conclusion of the regular council meeting pursuant to subsections 91C of the Community Charter, Labor Relations or other employee relations, and 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service. They're at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
I will second that.
All right, thanks very much. I don't see anybody wanting to speak to it, so I'll just poll council to see how they are. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor?
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor as well. And moving right along, inserted right now is 8.3, the Ace Brewing. And I believe it's Councillor Cole-Hamilton was going to take that.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll move that structural change to liquor license application brackets Ace Brewing Company Limited, 150 Mansfield Drive. Council approve option 1 as follows. Sub 1, the Council of the City of Courtenay recommends the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, LCRB, approve the application for Ace Brewing Company Limited structural change to a liquor license with the conditions that the patio be closed by 10 p.m. on Sundays to Thursdays, 11 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays, and no music will be played outdoors after 9 p.m. Sundays to Thursdays, after 9 p.m. Sundays to Thursdays, 10 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays. Sub 2, Council's comments on the prescribed considerations are as follows. Sub A, if the amended application is approved, it would not result in an increase of noise in the area. Sub B, if the amended application is approved, it would not negatively impact the community based upon the submissions received by the public. And sub C, in order to gather the views of residents, the City of Courtenay posted a notice on the city's website outlining the application. Additionally, the RCMP was contacted and indicated having no concerns.
I'll second that.
All right, thanks very much. And again, another fast moving thing, and Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. As discussed last week, this application presented us with some challenges because on the one hand, there was the desire to support the viability of a local business, particularly in the COVID era. On the other hand, there were numerous residents of the nearby apartments who had concerns about noise and disturbances that would impact their quality of enjoyment of their homes. The owner, the proponent, has come forward this past week with some recommendations that they're prepared to do to mitigate those impacts. Not noted in the resolution before council, I believe, is the installation of vegetation that would in fact hopefully dampen some of the sound, acting as a barrier. I don't know if staff have the ability to comment on that, but I think the concession that the business owner has made to restrict the late evening music and such is a significant step. I know it won't go the complete distance to soothing the concerns of all the residents, but I'm satisfied that given the overall circumstances that we can support this resolution at this time, and hopefully this business will have a viable operational chance of success. If staff could comment on the vegetation, I'd appreciate it.
All right, and Mr. Allen, you had your hand up, so I don't know if you wanted to speak to that specifically or if you wanted to speak more generally, but the floor is yours. You've muted yourself though, so.
Great. So respecting the vegetation question, I'll turn it over to Matt. But I will say that I saw the original report that was intended to go to the 25th, and it did indicate staff support for the changes, all the changes that are included in this resolution. But I'll turn it over to Matt to speak to the vegetation.
Thank you, through CAO to Mayor and Council. No, it's not mentioned in the resolution, but it is included in the proposal, so it's something that they'll be integrating into the patio design. So I don't think we need to include it in the resolution because I think there's some uncertainty as to whether it actually would mitigate noise concerns. So I think we just leave it to when the patio is implemented, having the vegetation implemented at the same time.
Thanks very much. I wonder if, just as follow-up, I could ask if staff might be able to have a connection with the RCMP during some of the other noise concerns that were noted by the residents of the area, given that they're not bylaw matters, loud motorcycles and speeders and that type of thing. Is that something staff could follow up with the RCMP in relation to?
I'll weigh in on that. I think certainly we could be mindful of that, especially with a new business like that opening up. So I'll just commit to the fact that staff will be proactive if we get any complaints and direct them towards the RCMP.
Thanks very much.
All right, and Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to note that in the resolution around council's comments, it does say if the amended application is approved, it would not increase in an increase of noise in the area. And I think it would be important just for the residents in the area. I don't think that, I think with a business opening like this, there's going to be a bit of noise increase probably compared to an empty lot. So I'm wondering if that piece could be slightly reworded so it doesn't give kind of a false sense of security for the neighbors, something that says would not result in an increase of noise disturbance or something like that. Anyway, it's just a thought on that. I wanted to note that, again, this is a new business, which is going to be 50% capacity. So hopefully that will help in the kind of beginning stages of this. And I agree with Councillor Hillian's point around maybe connecting with the RCMP, because some of those complaints that have happened are not necessarily specifically connected to that business, and it would be good to have a bit of clarity around that. But I understand that that might be a little bit out of context, but is there a way to adjust that language just slightly, or does anybody else have thoughts on that? I just think that it's kind of a bold claim to say that there would not be an increase in noise. And it might be something that the public, if they, or the residents in the area might, call us on. Thanks.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my recollection is, and I'll defer to Ian Buck on this, but or Matt, that the resolution, the format of the resolution is something that's just a requirement of the province. But again, I'll turn it over to Ian to answer that.
Yeah, that's correct. We are required to have council comment on those items. One suggestion, maybe if that concern is there, that because the requirement is just a comment on the impact of noise, could be that if the amended application is approved, the reduced hours of operation and outdoor music would limit the increase of noise in the area.
Right.
But
yeah.
I'll leave that to council to weigh in on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was going to say in the future, maybe we should change the wording to something more along the lines of unreasonably increase the amount of noise. And the reason I say that is because as we grow as a city and mature, I think it's inevitable that, you're going to have more noise in certain areas. When I moved here 20 years ago, I could go downtown and have a nice nap at around 5 in the afternoon. But that's not to say that's how we want to progress. So obviously, when we're considering this, we're looking at the larger picture of our economy and our ability to be a community. And so I think this patio really does fill those needs. And some might not like that it's going to be a little bit noisier, but that's a fact of life when you do increase your business. There are other things that we could do to decrease noise in the area, and those would be along the lines of dealing with motorcycles and cars and other things that make a lot of noise at all hours of the night. So I think there's other places to put our efforts if that's what we want to do for those neighborhoods. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I take Councillor McCollum's point, like read literally, it said would not result in an increase. And I mean, and with it will result in some small but reasonable increase, and reasonable in a commercial area such as this, and reasonable in terms of the hours. Perhaps an amendment along the lines of what Mr. Buck suggested, or perhaps just the inclusion of the word so read would not result in any significant increase of noise in the area. Would that be, would that fit the wording that is required by the LCRB? If so, I would be happy to amend it to that.
If I could weigh in, my concern, and again, I'll defer to Ian Buck on this. My concern is you're trying to fast track this thing, and you're changing the wording of the resolution which may or may not have an impact in how quickly it's processed. So Ian, if you can weigh in, if the wording is changed from what we've typically used in all previous that I can recall applications, does that put some measure of risk on this being approved by the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board?
Yeah, it's a good question, and to be honest, I don't know whether it would or wouldn't. We historically have used that wording. My recollection of the legislation is just that you need to comment on it. It's ultimately the province that's going to approve or deny the license to do this expansion. I don't think there's significant risk, but it's always difficult for staff to craft these resolutions where we're putting words in the mouth of council sort of ahead of time. So, but whether it will delay or not, it's possible, just because we've always used that historic won't result in an increase. The only other comment I'll make is and just related to the increase in noise. Is there, presumably based on the comments we're getting from the neighborhood, is noise in that area based on the existing pub and patio? So is this, again, is it an appreciable increase or a minor increase? I take the points that are being made. But to be honest, whether it delays it or not, I can't answer that question.
Okay. Mr. Allen, did you want to follow up, or? Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just would encourage council not to make any changes on the fly to this already late change to the agenda. If in the future, based on good points that have been made here, we could put our minds to improved wording, which I think we can, then I would suggest let's take that tack and not change this resolution.
Okay. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest to council that we let it go this time, and we've made our comments, and I think there is unanimous consent that there might be some increase in noise, but we think it's well worth the trade-off, and that we can work on these sorts of motions down the line. If we want to be in writing, we want to be more formal about it.
Okay. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with Councillor Frisch and Mr. Allen. I think we've done the weighing here already and come to a decision that we're comfortable with. And I think to muddy the waters at this point and possibly defeat the purpose of trying to move this forward and allow this business a chance to survive, I don't think we'd be assisting ourselves if that's likely to be the outcome of putting in wording that's unexpected. So anyway, having moved the resolution as is, I suggest we vote on it as is.
Okay, fair enough. And I don't see any other questions or comments, so let's poll council. So starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So unanimous decision. Excellent. And next, I think, was that Councillor Cole-Hamilton as well? Maybe not.
No, I'm down to second it, but I don't mind moving it.
Okay.
And this is the resolution, I believe, related to the regional district's poverty reduction assessment and strategy funding application. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. We just did the ACE one got kind of wedged in there on 8.3. So now we're on to 11.1.
All right. Well, I'll move that the correspondence dated March 6, 2020 from the Comox Valley Regional District, CVRD, to create a regional poverty reduction action plan in support of the province's Together BC Poverty Reduction Strategy be received for information, and that the City of Courtenay support the CVRD's application to the Union of BC Municipalities Poverty Reduction Action and Planning Program for grant funding on behalf of Comox Valley local governments to develop a regional poverty action plan focused on affordable housing, transportation, children and youth, and food security.
I'll second that.
Excellent.
And if I could
yeah.
briefly speak to it, Mr. Mayor, I believe as explained by staff, this was scheduled to come forward at our meeting in March. And the meeting was canceled due to the COVID-19 crisis. So it's coming forward to us now. I believe the regional district has in fact made this application, and it's essentially a $150,000 grant that would come to the community, and it would involve looking into strategies related to the issues noted in the resolution. I also note that there was a resolution at the CVRD that added to affordable housing, transportation, children and youth, and food security the issue of accessibility, as that also impacts poverty and access to local services. So I think it's potentially a significant step for the Valley if this funding comes forward. It would provide both research and action items to local organizations that are working to alleviate poverty in our community. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. And I don't see any other comments or questions. So does staff want to speak to this at all? Don't see anybody raising their hand. So it's been moved and seconded. So we'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin. Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. So that passes unanimously, and I believe we are on to bylaws, and I think starting with Councillor Morin. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that.
All good.
Yes, I would move that municipal ticket information amendment bylaw number 3006/2020, a bylaw to amend municipal ticket information bylaw number 2435/2006 be received for first, second, and third reading. Or sorry, pass.
All right, that's been first and seconded. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, I'll poll council to see if you're in favor. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well, so that passes. And next, Councillor Theos.
I'm having a hard time trying to find this, so if someone else can move forward with moving and I can second it. We'll reverse.
12.1.2.
Move that the City of Courtenay fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3007/2020, a bylaw to amend City of Courtenay fees and charges bylaw number 1673/1992, pass first, second, and third reading.
And I'll second that. Thank you.
Excellent. Awesome. Any questions or comments regarding that? And I don't see anybody, so I'll pull council again. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. And for final adoption.
I will move that the Municipal Ticket Information Amendment Bylaw number 3006/2020, a bylaw to amend Municipal Tickets Information Bylaw number 2435/2006 be finally adopted.
Second that.
All right. And I don't see any questions. So polling council, Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So that passes unanimously. And I believe the last bylaw of the day.
I'll move that the City of Courtenay fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3007/2020, a bylaw to amend City of Courtenay fees and charges bylaw number 1673/1992 be finally adopted.
Second.
I'll second.
All right. And I'll just poll council. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor?
Councillor Hillian,
In favor?
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Moran,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
I'm in favor.
and I'm in favor as well. So that, again, that's our last bylaw of the day. I did want to comment when we started the meeting just before we adjourn, just to take a moment and just acknowledge the accident that happened on the weekend with the snowbirds in Kamloops. This is the time of year when they often are in the Comox Valley training, and just wanted to send our thoughts and our sorrow to the families of the lost and the injured. So yeah, that was it. So again, thanks everybody for the meeting today, and we have adjournment.
Move adjournment.
And I will second that.
Excellent. Unless somebody says no, I'm going to assume that that is unanimous. And thank everybody for watching our meeting.